Good morning. It's nearly Christmas, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen these plants. Maybe you've got one at home called poinsettias. You've seen them, I'm sure, in all the supermarkets. Some very strange things about this particular plant, and that is these red things are not the flowers. These, in fact, are modified leaves. The flowers are these tiny little bits right in the centre there. Now that's unusual to start with. And why do we have poinsettias at Christmas? That was a question I had to ask myself, so I had to go and look it up. Well, the story goes that apparently in Mexico, which is where these plants come from, a little girl called Pepita, she was going off to church on Christmas Eve, and she wanted to take a gift to the baby Jesus. And she had nothing at all. And her sister said to her, "Why don't you take some flowers from along the roadside?" And in Mexico, these things grow like weeds. In fact, they grow up to 15 feet tall, huge. And so she did. But at the time, there were no red leaves on it at all. So she took the green plants and she laid them down in front of the model of the Nativity. And the story goes, and it is just a story, the story goes that as she laid it down and prayed, when she opened her eyes, the tops of the plants had all turned red, like this. And sometimes it's called the Star of Bethlehem. Now that's the story behind them, and that's why we have them here in England. Originally they came from Mexico, they then got taken to America, and of course what the Americans do, we tend to end up doing as well, and so we now have them in this country. And everywhere you go, I'm sure you see these around. Now, that little girl had nothing to give to Jesus, and that was her dilemma. But there's a carol that we sing almost every single year in the bleak midwinter. And the last verse of that carol, it says this. It says, "What can I give him? Poor as I am." This little girl had nothing at all. She said, "If I were a shepherd, I would bring a lamb. If I were a wise man, I would do my part. But what can I give him?" Now you might think as children you've got nothing to give to Jesus. But the last line says this. It says, "Give him my heart." Now you might think to yourself, well, I'm a bit young to do things like this, to want Jesus into my life and into my heart. But can I tell you, my dad was 5 years old when he gave his heart to Jesus. And he knew Jesus right the way through his life. And he was an amazing guy. And part of that was because Jesus was in his life. And when we give our lives over to Jesus, he helps us in all the things that we need to be doing, whether it's in just everyday things, or whether it's special things in church, or whether it's in our schoolwork or in our family. It makes a huge difference when we have Jesus in our life. And so this Christmas, maybe for the first time, you'd like to say to Jesus, "I'm sorry for the things I've done wrong, and please come into my heart and stay this Christmas."